Welcome, everybody. We will call this meeting to order, the Facilities Master Plan Board Workshop for May 26, 2022. This is in review of programs we've had to date and we'll be sharing with our advisors, LPL today, and LPA rather, LPA. And as we get started, I know this is one of two meetings today, but I wanted us to take a moment of silence in recognition of our families, the students and the teachers who were lost in Uvalde, Texas at Robb School. If we would, a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Blake, would you like to introduce our guests and our program today?
I would love to. So we're really lucky to have partners at LPA, working on our master plan. They've been with us now. It's almost been three years or 3+ years.
Yes.
We really enjoy the partnership. Thank you for being here today. Today we get an opportunity to go through the process of seeing where the master plan has come, where it is now, and really trying to finalize some thoughts, to see the work that's gone into. We were lucky enough to have community members that came out. It was a few weeks ago to Dana Middle School, and we went through a town hall type event, also looking at our master plan. So this is an opportunity to move, to see where we are, to be able to start moving kind of the needle towards completed master plan. Hopefully very soon we'll be at the tail end there. So thank you both. Today we have Rick Musto and Joe Lau from LPA, and I guess who am I going to turn it over to, Rick? Rick, you're going to take it away?
Yes, I'll start us
Rick,
off.
go ahead and take it away. Thank you for being here.
Eleni, get the presentation up.
Roger and Nelson, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Wendy, I know you're on your way somewhere, but oh, good.
There we go.
That's what I was requesting. Perfect. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you, members of the board, superintendent. Thank you for having us. It's a thrill actually to be here. As Blake mentioned, we started this process in 2019, and we did a similar program workshop in 2020, but unfortunately that was done virtually. So it's really great to be here in person, to be able to see everybody and see expressions and be able to walk through the fruits of what we've done recently. So what we're going to do is walk through the process we've done recently, as we call this an update or kind of a refresh of the master plan process that concluded in 2020. And I think you'll see we've got some great things to show you today. So myself, Rick Musto, project director with LPA, and Joe Lau are here today. Jim would have been here. He's the director of our school planning and still hasn't quite gotten over the illness he's had now for a couple of weeks. So his voice is still not real strong. So he felt it would be best to stay back today again. So we're going to talk today about some of the targets that we're going to be doing. We're going to get into a little detail about based on the update of the master plan and all the programs identified in the sites, what the total program cost is in terms of just rough order of magnitude cost. Then we're going to go into the diagrams a little bit and talk about prioritization and give you a little review of some of the previous prioritization recaps of some of the stakeholders we've engaged with over not only from the 2020 process, but in most recently in the last town hall that we conducted. And then we're going to do an activity with the board to get a sense of where everybody feels the priorities are at the district in terms of the school sites. So the targets are, so you can see in terms of the schedule, this was just the schedule that we began the beginning part of this year for the update. We've had this is just kind of the very end of a long process that started in 2019, but we've had a series of planning meetings. One of the big drivers to this update was the fact that now the state is mandating transitional care to be introduced into the school. So we went through a little TK programming exercise with the district to determine how that can be implemented into Leisburn. And we looked at updates on the site diagrams. We did some preliminary costing, and then we conducted the town hall on April 25th, which I think a lot of people, I think most of the board was there, and it was a really spectacular turnout. All the school sites were represented, so we got some really good input at that. And at that process, and we'll present results of what we learned from that town hall meeting today as well. So we're at the workshop today, and the idea is that by June, then hopefully we'll put a wrap on this update, and then you'll be able to adopt it if it falls in line with what your thoughts were. So we're going to talk now, getting right into the nitty gritty and talk about dollars cost. So what we did is, based on all the site diagrams and all the scopes that have been put together, we put together a rough order of magnitude cost, and it includes construction cost and all the soft costs that would go into a project that you would allocate to a particular project, including all the fees that would be paid and inspections and furniture, furnishings, equipment. Those are all the things that would be included in the costs that we're going to be talking about. There's some things that are not included in the costs, and we'll talk more about how those are going to be taken care of. But there's things that are unknowns, even at a master plan level. So we don't know what the offsite utilities might be, and some of the city fees you might pay for connections, offsite work. Land acquisition costs aren't included, but of course, that's not really going to be anything that we're going to be having to worry about. Hazardous material surveys, abatement, those kinds of things are a little bit unknown. And everything we'll be talking about today are based on cost estimates in 2022 dollars. So what's not included are escalating the projects past 2022. And the reason we do that is because we don't really know how projects will be prioritized and laid out in terms of the next several years. So we have another method of accommodating that, but the dollars right now are just in 2022. And then there's another category called temporary housing or interim housing. The goal is always to minimize that, but until you actually put pencil to paper and start developing the work at a site, you don't really know if you're going to be needing to provide interim housing. So those costs aren't included as well. So go to the next slide. We're going to be giving you these costs, rough order of magnitudes in a couple different ways. And one way we're going to be doing it is the master plan has been divided into these 15 scope of work categories. And we went through these in the past, so this should be a review for everybody. And we walked this through at the town hall meeting. But essentially, each of the school sites, when you see the diagrams, they have these different configurations. And we talk about things in terms of modernization of existing classrooms. So just redoing existing spaces, reconfiguring classrooms, which are when you take walls down and you change uses within the spaces. New construction, if you're building a new building, whether it's classrooms or administration spaces, that's its own category. Then within whether it's modernization or new construction, anytime it has to do with makerspace, STEM, science, art, music, and elective spaces, we put those in their own category, so you can kind of get a sense of what that costs throughout the program. Multi-purpose rooms and food service are their own category. Library spaces, anything dealing with administration, staff support, student and counseling services are its own category. Existing building systems, toilet and improved energy efficiency, those are a separate category again. Site utilities, when you're doing improvements within site like water, sewer, gas improvements within the site, those are their own category. Safety, security, of course. Oh yeah, maybe you can hand it out to everybody while I go through it, yeah. Safety, security, which are things like single point entries, fencing, security locks, cameras, those all fall under the category of safety, security. Parking drop off and entry plaza, its own category. Then we have things dedicated to outdoor learning environments, upgrading quads, creating outdoor learning spaces. Exterior play spaces, play fields, and hard courts are their own category. Then flexible furniture, and then finally technology, infrastructure, and equipment. So this again is very consistent with exactly the same categories that we had when we did the initial master plan in 2020. And so we're just, so we've updated costs for all these categories. So now what we're looking at is just kind of.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Sure.
The technology, infrastructure and equipment, I would imagine some of that is blended in with the other modernization of the classrooms and so on, or is that really considered an individual item?
So when we look at the modernization costs, we do try to look at the dollars separately. So anything dealing with data infrastructure or creating IDF rooms or your Wi-Fi networking, we do pull that out separate so you can see what that technology cost is. Now, what's not in the technology cost are things that would be not part of construction, so. And individual devices, computers, printers, those kinds of things are not part of the technology number, that would be separate as a. Does that answer your question?
No,
Oh, okay.
my question really has to do with, part of modernization might include additional infrastructure in the walls for ports or additional cabling, additional ways to use technology in the classroom.
Yeah, so I guess breaking it out into the categories, we're just trying to like chunk out different pieces of the scopes of work, so it's like a little bit more manageable in terms of to prioritize. So within modernization, the data ports and the Wi-Fi is not included in the modernization portion. So yes, if you were doing a comprehensive modernization, you would have to grab some of the dollars from the category 15 to include into category 01 to do a complete project. But just for simplicity wise, we've broken it into the 15 categories for you to be able to, because knowing that you won't be able to do everything all at once is just a way of seeing it in a different, in these categories that you can prioritize.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be blended. So some of these numbers would be blended. For example, if you're doing modernization, and while you're doing the modernization, you're gonna go upgrade some site utilities, and that's in category 9. So some of those dollars, yes, would have to come out of there and
Okay.
be added to it. Yeah.
So one more question along these lines, for clarity, on 15 on the handout you gave us, it says scope 15 tech infrastructure and equipment, and the bullet is presentation equipment, including audio system.
Yeah.
Why is that as opposed to internet, or I'm not understanding why that's, help me out.
So we added not just the infrastructure portion to that number, but there's also like, for example, projector, or if you have LCD screen or something, there's like a cost in there also for some of the technology fund, because we know that that's a huge cost for a district.
But the standard things like Joanne was referencing of internet access, now that's already here, you just
That's
didn't,
in
you just
15.
didn't.
I
fully-
didn't list it
I just
out,
thought it was
yeah.
an odd bullet, so I didn't understand that's
Yeah.
confusing. Thank you.
Yeah, I think I just lumped it all into infrastructure, but like probably that's not the correct IT terminology for all of those, yeah.
So yeah, so if you do a modernization project, you're gonna do all the technology with it, that's just part of the process, but we've just broken it into 2 little pieces.
So the amount that's in the technology, infrastructure and equipment line item is, how shall I say that? Is there any reference to other line items on this scope of work? Is it a standalone
No,
line item?
well, what you'll see is, yeah, so every site has each of these categories broken out for that specific site. So this is just a total of all the sites together.
Okay.
So this is really the reveal of the total cost that's identified in the whole entire project. It's about $115,266,200 in 2022 dollars. So
Sure, I
if-
get that.
so now the next slide we'll show you is how that same 115 million breaks out by site. So we're just giving you different ways of
Okay.
how to digest that large number. Sometimes we'll start and show you, okay, each site is this much, and you'll say, oh, that's a big number, and then we'll say, oh, by the way, safety security across all sites is this number. So this is just a way of pulling out from each of the individual sites, each of these scope categories, so you can just get an idea of how it breaks out for the total number.
So Greg, just so modernization of the existing classrooms, really just the walls, the floors, and it's the exterior, the interior walls and
Yeah.
doors, exterior.
It's the
doors.
finishes, it's the lighting.
Windows,
Right.
Yeah.
doors.
Yeah. So we have a separate number, and we, in the previous presentations, we have a series of slides that show kind of more a definition of each of the scope of work categories, and it's actually pretty lengthy. We didn't bring that whole presentation today, just thought this would be a little more streamlined. So, but then we have a different, it's a way to put more accurate cost estimates together, because some of the buildings that are existing, you're doing more than just modernization. You actually have to move walls around, and like you might have a substandard size classroom, or you might be putting a new program into an existing space. That's a different category. We call that reconfiguring classrooms and shared collaboration spaces. So the dollars per square foot to do that type of work is a little higher than it would be for modernization. So we wanted to end up, so, we had a more realistic estimate for each site. So here's just a little better definition of technology, classroom technology package, smart boards, projectors. If you're doing smart boards, I mean, sometimes they could include flat screens, or it could include short throw projectors, project mouse, flashing monitors, the audio system, which are, sometimes speaker systems, things like that enhance the sound. Upgrade backbone of the technology system, wireless access points, the switches and things you would have in your IDF and your MDF rooms, and upgrade the fiber to support the system. So all those things are kind of lumped together in technology infrastructure.
Thank you.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, it helps, yeah.
So the kind of the big thing here is we just replicated all the categories, and you can see how it breaks down across each of these categories. So
Okay, I have one more thing, just to clarify, there's no intent for order priority or any sort of order to this listing?
no, this is just a way we organize the cost estimating
I
process.
think that's part of this workshop is later, we'll be doing that.
Right, but I just wondered if there was any implied,
No.
None whatsoever. No, this is just simply a listing of all the different categories that we've
all
identified.
right, thanks.
Great questions, and keep them coming as we go through, because there's a lot of data here. So I'll go to the next slide. So here's another way to look at those dollars organized in a little different way. So you can see on the left, if you look at just the school sites, those are the costs for each of the school sites, total project cost in 2022 dollars. It comes up to about $83,339,000. And then we have three other, we just categorize as other sites. The Del Air site, the playfields, Del Air site, the school, we've broken those out. And then 135th and Aviation Site playfields. So those three sites plus the school sites all together, you can see kind of down below, we have the two categories. It adds up again to the $115,266,000. So it's the same number, only you can kind of see how it's spread across and represented by school site. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the other side of the equation, about the dollars the district has to allocate towards projects. So we're going to talk about funding sources. And the first funding source is money that you would be entitled to that could come from the state of California in terms of matching funds. So this is an estimate that was put together in 2020 that represents the eligibility the district has for modernization. So the school sites, if they have been modernized in the past 25 years, then they'd be eligible for state matching funds. So this represents what your eligibility is. That doesn't mean you'll have immediate access to these dollars. You have to have a project that would go through the Division of State Architect, get approved plans. Then if the values, whatever the values are, you would be entitled to those as matching funds. And then it would require the state to actually have the money to give you to match the funds. So right now, there's a lot of backlog at the state for this type of work, but they've been actually, as you know, they've been working through it, and they've actually have released money to take care of all the current eligibility that's at the state level. So,
And this is. There we go. This is money that would be 100% matched of our own expense. Matching funds require us to spend.
yep, you would have to have your own dollars to get. You'd have to have your own 4.5 million to get access to those dollars.
And just a question, this is actually a question for Roger and Nelson. Are you guys able to hear and comment? Because I'm sure, this is your area of expertise. We love your input. Are you able to comment here? Not just here, but I mean throughout this meeting.
Yes, yeah, I'm able to hear the presentation as Rick is presenting them, and I will, yes.
Thanks, Roger.
Likewise. Thank you.
Yeah, these are estimated numbers. They really need to be revalidated, but these were what was represented in 2020, and they're likely still to be valuable. You might even have some more eligibility that wasn't identified that you became eligible for since 2020. So we can go to the next slide. And additional dollars that you'd have that you could apply to projects. These are just again estimates, but you would have developer fees, at least back represented about $1 million you have for that you collect per year times 10 years. So that's about $1 million dollar amount. You have general funds dollars that are deferred maintenance and set asides. Again, that's times 10 years. You have about $1 million there. Fund 25 balance. This is dollars that were, again, this goes back to 2020. That was a zero amount. So we're assuming there's no dollars in that fund. And then state school facilities program eligibility. You have dollar value of current applications submitted to OPSC 900,000. That was something you had in the process in the past. I'm not sure if that's actually gone through or. Okay, so that's still waiting.
Available to us? Not really. So we probably could eliminate that.
I mean, it's still open, so.
So the state hasn't funded or hasn't yet, okay. Okay. So it's still out there, maybe we'll get access to it. And then the 4,523,000 that we just summarized from the previous page. Then the last item is a potential future general obligation bond. And that's right now, we just represented that to be a range. So the range would be somewhere between 90 million and 125 million. That's just based on your bonding capacity. So that we're showing with that added with all the other dollar amounts, you can see the total potential funding below in red. So the range would be somewhere around 97 million to 132 million. That would be the range of potential funding that you would have to apply to projects. So what we like to say though is, remember I gave you that caveat of all those things not included in your cost estimate. The things like the future, all the escalation moving forward. And as you know, right now, we're really challenging times. There's a lot of unknowns in terms of escalation. For all those things that aren't accounted for, what we've seen historically is that what you want to do is set aside about a third of all your dollars available to take care of all those unknowns in the future. And that way you'll have a viable plan. You'll be able to fund everything that you had planned on funding. So what you really want to do is if you let's say you have the upper end of the range here, 132 million, you only can spend 2/3 of those dollars. The other third have to go in the bank and you use those as you move along with projects. So the range of money you have available to spend, so to speak, on projects are somewhere between 66 million and 90 million. If you were to release every single project day 1, 2022 and get everything bid and built, you could probably do a lot more than 2/3, but obviously that's not possible and things have to be spread out across years. So there's just cost to doing that. So this is just a very frugal way to make sure that what you promised to build, you can actually build. A lot of districts get into trouble. They think, oh, we've got all this money and they plan all these projects. And when they get towards the end of their program, they run out of money. So this is just a way to assure that you've got money down the road to be able to deliver what you promised the community that you're going to do.
Rick, this is Roger.
Yes.
Couple of quick questions here. I see the top line there says total FMP need 2022, 121 million. The prior slide was about 115. Was there like a $6 million ad there somewhere, or is it supposed to be 115 or 120?
I think that's I hate to say, but a typo. It should really be the 115 is the dollar amount we're looking at.
Okay, so
I think you know what that number represents is that was the old 2020 number, believe it or not. And your need actually from 2020 till today has gone down because of the work identified by each of the sites. So that not only it is a bit of a typo, but it is an interesting number to see because if you were to compare what the presentation was in 2020, that was the dollar amount of need at the time. So your need now is actually less, which is great, actually.
I think too, there was, last we had planned to construct another facility on the 135th Aviation Site that is not reflected in this. So there was more new construction.
Exactly. There's a whole new school site that was a program planned facility.
In the preschool.
And that makes sense, Rick, because at the bottom you have that note of 2/3 of the program budget allocated in 2020. So I think this slide was previously referring to that presentation. So
yeah.
But right now these numbers are updated to 2022 dollars, right?
Yep. So the dollars in the funds that are identified in the potential funding and available for 2022. Those are all correct. So,
Okay, all right, thank you.
yep.
I had one quick question, Rick. I noticed that you indicated in the state school facilities program that we have state eligibility for modernization of up to $4.5 million. What about new construction? Do we have any eligibility for new construction?
At the time this was looked at, there was no new construction eligibility. And it's based on enrollment, and the consultant at the time that did the projections did not identify any new construction eligibility.
Okay, thank you.
And one note here as well, just for my colleagues on the board. There's a note here. It says remaining 1/3 to be used as a cost allowance to cover escalation to midpoint of construction. That's a big variable for all of us, right? Because if we're going to do, say, this facilities master plan over 5 years or 10 years, right? The midpoint of construction, it could be very long. And if we forecast, say, 6% or 8% per year of escalation costs, you can see that starts to compound. And the further out we get to the implementation of a facilities master plan, the costlier it gets. So for example, if we factor in 8% cost escalation and it takes 5 years, we're already looking at close to 40% of a cost escalation increase, plus whatever the soft costs are that Rick is showing here, which would cover, for example, architectural fees, geotechnical fees, construction management fees, program support services, and things like that. So that cost escalation is really critical in terms of when we get to that midpoint of construction, because Joanne, to your question earlier about project priorities, depending on how fast the district wants to move or can move forward with the sale of bonds, that escalation really has an impact on what we can do.
Question to that point, Rick and Roger and Nelson. Is there ever a time where there's de-escalation due to recession? Because I know it's been a long time since we've had a recession, but it's hard to fathom there isn't a time when this doesn't go down, or does it never go down?
There was a time, actually. Thing that I recall is doing a presentation very similar to this in 2006. And I'll tell you specifically, it was actually Arcadia Unified where we did a master plan. It was actually a fairly small district, one high school district, and they had a pretty robust program, and they wanted to redo a lot of their work in their schools. They did a bond. I want to say it was 134 million at the time. And back 2006 was a long time ago, but they went from this. They passed their bond, and immediately we hit this recession, and we had all these estimates for project costs or for construction costs, and the first wave of projects came in 25–30% under budget because everything just fell off the map. I mean, that's a very rare thing, but it does happen. It's a cycle. And
I'm not rooting for a recession.
No,
I don't want a recession.
But it happened, yeah.
I mean, I've always heard these are endlessly escalating, and I just wanted a reality check on it.
Yeah, and again, right now, we've heard that 2022, the escalation is about 7%, so 7, maybe 8. That's pretty high, and I don't think anybody would project that you're gonna have 10 years of 8% escalation. That would be extraordinary. So although nobody, it's just a good guess, it's hard to predict. But what this rule of thumb of the 1/3, 2/3 is historically what we've used over time, and it seems to play out. Now, if you had a long duration or long hold on your program and you put something on the shelf for many years, obviously then you will have this kind of higher escalation cost. But assuming if things moved ahead in 2023 and you were able to start rolling out projects, you should be able to hold to these numbers.
I had one more question, Rick, and it's kind of following up on the state eligibility that I just asked, and also on a comment that you made early on that's changed in the last 2 years. And actually, it's a fairly new program, so I'm not sure if you have an answer for this. Would there be eligibility, new construction eligibility, in light of the new transitional kindergarten program?
There is eligibility. It's not very robust, and it's based on need in individual school districts. And there are various programs, and there was a time where the state was going to have a pretty large bond on the ballot in November, which might have unleashed even other programs like career tech type of programs. There's seismic programs. There are programs out there that you could be eligible for. We're not showing it here, planning for it, but I think if you were like any smart district, you would, when you were to start a project, you would make sure you turned over every stone possible to identify any cost that you could find.
Okay.
So this is sort of the low hanging fruit, the things that we know about without digging too deep, but there potentially could be other funding sources for you.
Okay,
I could jump into, Nelson, we actually do have a meeting scheduled or soon to be scheduled with King Consulting, and I know they're gonna be looking at various options for us, just to make sure that we explore all of these, all these funding sources. So we should have, I could provide a better update on that, maybe the next board meeting.
okay, great. I know it's a fairly new program and obviously with a immediate requirement, so that's why I'm asking.
And we did miss the first round, we just didn't have the need, but there's a second round of funding for TK as well, so we'll have to, that's where we want to start doing some exploration.
Roger and Nelson, this is Joanne, I have a question. As you're working around the industry, looking at schools and helping helping schools to go through some of their construction projects, have people put projects on hold in the last couple of years? Have things been going forward sort of as per usual? Is there a big backlog of work that's suddenly gonna hit, as we're kind of coming out of COVID? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, I can speak at least from my experience. Actually, most districts have accelerated work in the last number of years and took advantage, obviously, of the current situation with the pandemic. There is a backlog of work. Construction continues to proceed fairly strong among districts, and actually there are some local nearby school districts that are actually considering some local bonds this November. Actually two come to mind here locally close to us. It's Long Beach Unified School District that's considering a $1.5 billion program, and LACCD is the latest that is considering a $5 billion program. So I guess the answer to Joanne is yes, construction continues to boom and stay strong, at least in the public sector and school districts. Roger probably has a comment to this, and I'm sure Rick, who works with a lot of school districts, probably has some input as well on that question. Roger?
With regards to some of the projects and districts that we're working with, Joanne, through COVID, since the school districts were closed for such a big period of that, we actually saw an increase because there was no as many site logistics to consider, student safety for construction and things like that. So some of the projects actually moved forward faster for those districts that had bonds and funding. If they didn't, then they couldn't really capitalize on that vacancy, if you will. But we have not seen that great of a slowdown or any large projects being put on hold. There may have been some competing priorities, but that was like on a school district by district basis. Maybe they couldn't afford a certain project, but they moved a different project up on the list. So we did not experience a slowdown.
Yeah, if I were just to weigh in on that, I would agree 100% that we've seen a lot of districts continue on with their programs, some cases accelerate. One of the big fish in the sea, so to speak, LA Unified, they put no stops on their programs at all, and they have some very significant projects underway. So I can think of one district actually that decided for a lot of internal reasons to put a pause on a program. There was a lot of other issues, but other than like a very isolated incident, I think most districts just kept moving ahead.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that from everybody's comments. Thanks.
I think we can go to the next slide here. So now we're just gonna do, we have all the plans up on the screen, and I'll leave it up to the board to advise how much detail you want to get into each slide, but I would let Jamae kind of walk you through what each of the sites are doing. And this is very similar to what we did at the town hall meeting in terms of showing you what each site has. So we can do a quick refresher, or you could just certainly ask as many questions as you like.
A quick refresher is a good idea.
Okay.
All right, so the site is the 135th Aviation Site, and so everything north of the M&O and SLC was already been demolished, and so here we're showing multi-use fields, with regulation size, softball, two of those, and then a backstop, extra backstop, and then also, the regulation size, full-size soccer with, smaller overlays for Little League
Right.
and practice fields. Yeah.
Joe, my quick question, the field that's to the south, was that southwest, right?
Mhm.
That's not regulation, right? Is that more of a Little League field?
That's more the Little League field, yeah. The
So-
one on the top part, that's angled down, that's the full-size softball, yeah.
Okay, so there's one full-size softball field, one Little League field, and then the soccer.
Yes.
fields. Yeah, okay, thanks.
I guess you can use the mouse
I didn't know how, yeah.
if you have an electronic.
Okay. Yeah, just more in detail, it's the NFHS softball, Little League, U56, and then NFHS soccer, which with the two smaller soccer overlays that are the U11, 12, and then you could also overlay, which is not shown there, 4 soccers that are U9, 10.
So when you say full-size softball, you mean high school softball?
Yeah. Okay, next slide. All right, and then the Del Air site, here we're showing modernization of the school portion, as well as some expansion of the parking, and then full-size NFHS size baseball and softball here with no overlap on those.
Question on that, I think there was something when, earlier conversations about where they must be facing. I don't know, I'm assuming relative to the sun. I don't, is that these,
Yes.
because they're obviously facing
These
opposite each other.
are, yeah, these are at best orientation and second best orientation in terms of the orientation of those fields currently.
Northeast is the standard, so the goal,
I just wonder, is this, but I mean, I just
Baseball's
want to make
the
sure
best
we're meeting criteria of CIF or whatever the.
Correct, yeah, so this is actually, there's the 4 orientations, and this northeast orientation that you see the baseball field is actually the sort of the premier
Advice.
orientation.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure we're good on that.
So I have questions about both these field graphics that we just saw.
Mhm.
Having my kids played baseball on these very fields that you're showing there, and of course they played soccer on other fields closer to the side here. They were full of gopher holes and full of just, really rocks and bad drainage and just, really needing not just a field overlay, but a lot of groundwork to be appropriate. And so I'm curious, do the costs that you're showing include that sort of field, sort of ground reparation as well as irrigation and so forth?
Yes, so currently in the budget numbers that you're seeing included is actually synthetic field for both these fields. Yeah, so and then synthetic field also requires a special drainage system underneath that with the proper stand and all of that kind of stuff. So that's all included in the cost currently.
It includes leveling the fields and
Yes.
use of proper drainage and so on, so.
Yes, all of that will have to be regraded, redone. Soil will have to be hauled out probably, just to redo all of the drainage underneath all of that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and does it include the proper fencing?
Yes. So we're not only including fencing, but also proper estimated high netting systems, like right here, our sports and rec team is recommending 40-foot netting in these
Noticing those
zones.
homes right along.
Exactly,
Right.
yeah, it just depends on what you're bordering on and as well as the size of the field and also who they think will be playing on it, right?
Okay.
So, yeah, so it's a recommended height currently.
Okay.
I don't know if this is in your equation or more on us, but these have a presumable lifespan. I don't know if it's 10 years and a replacement cost of, I don't know if it's $1 million, but we need to build that into our plans. Obviously, I can't imagine us setting this up and then not setting us up for replacement.
Well, one of the things that we've done, of course, with soccer is to request an escrow account from the various sports leagues to assist with that sort of repair and replacement over the years. I'm sure we would just want to do the same thing,
Yeah.
not just at district expense.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Joe May, I may have missed it. The baseball field here that you have
Yes,
on the larger one, is that a CIF approved baseball field?
yes, so yeah, it should be the same because it's the NFHS baseball, yeah.
Okay, okay.
And then I
Joe,
guess-
may,
Sorry,
a
go
quick
ahead,
question. All the classrooms here are all shown as to receive a modernization. This is, so for modernization, that means going in and upgrading the classrooms, but not changing the programmatic use. We currently have DV Connect operating out of that area. So right now it's a modernization of the existing spaces, but not programmatic changes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
So the number reflected in the budget is just a pure modernization, no, not necessarily programmatic changes. But obviously a 960 square foot classroom is a 960 classroom, but if, for example, if you're saying like, oh, something's gonna be converted into a science lab, then no, that's not reflected in the budget. Yeah,
right, and thank you, because this is a straight modernization of the existing use, not to a new program. To
exactly.
your example, right, you're not taking a regular classroom to science. That's
Yeah.
not contemplated. It's classroom to classroom modernization.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Sorry,
Mhm.
quick question about the synthetic. I know there was a question, I believe, at maybe the town hall meeting about synthetic versus, a grass field.
Yeah.
This is synthetic all the way through, right? So including the infield? Is that
Yes.
correct? So it's
Yes.
full 100% synthetic?
Full synthetic, yes.
What's the cost difference between synthetic versus if you went full 100%, grass and dirt?
The grass alternative, we have it in our detailed estimate, would be a deduction of, sorry, I'm looking at. No, we don't have it for Del Air, but for the 135th and Aviation Site, like if you were to do that as natural grass, then it would be a deduction of 1.8 million.
Over the lifetime, any estimates over the life, I mean, just so we're talking dollars to dollars, not anything else.
Yeah,
The lifetime of
2022.
grass versus synthetic.
Yeah.
You've got watering, you've got upkeep, maintenance, do we have any idea what that cost would be?
Oh, I see, like a.
I'm trying to do an apples to apples over 10 years,
Yeah.
just money.
In terms of that, we'd have to get back to you with that number. There's
There must be a formula. out there.
there's numbers out there for that, yeah, because synthetic fields are not maintenance free, you have to have equipment, you have to have, you have to kind of toughed off
It's often
the.
built into the contracts though, to some extent, right?
It could be, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't have to buy the equipment, you can just have an agreement a maintenance agreement. But the option to go with just turf, just to address your question about gopher holes and things. The numbers that we typically include if you were to go turf field would be a very high-end turf field. So you'd go in and replace, you take out all the first level of all the ground, do regrading, put in a sand layer, improve drainage, so totally new irrigation. So if you went with the turf route, it wouldn't be what you have today. It would be a completely different, different field that would be much better, higher performing. You get longer life out of your turf as well, and it's better drainage and all that, so.
And then just to confirm, I think you guys mentioned this at the town hall, but there's concession space, but there's not like locker rooms or something like that at the field. It would just be like bathrooms and the concession stand.
Correct, yeah, similar to what you have in Dana.
So that's a really good question, Rebecca. So it does include restrooms?
Currently, we are showing the reconfiguration of those restrooms that are near the hard courts and fields, so that it could become dual use, as in like for the fields as well as the school. Yeah.
But the clubs, the players don't have, do they go onto school property? I mean, I realize Weisburn owns all this property, but do they go onto school grounds to use a restroom? Do they go into a school building?
No, like, you have this think of restroom right here.
Okay,
And so it's sort of in between. So I think we're putting a higher dollar amount on there so that they could be probably reconfigured. So you could have access on both sides and you would manage it by probably locking whichever door that it's not going to be accessed.
Yeah, so you'd be able to, what Joanne is saying is you'd be able to access the bathrooms from the field side and be able to lock them down from the school side. So there'd be a way to do that so you can use them from both sides.
yeah, that's great because number one, there never were restrooms there before. You
Mhm.
have to walk a mile to
Yeah.
really have to plan ahead. And the other thing is, there was always a concern to even add anything because access to school property was just not a good idea.
Right.
That's great, thank you. Good question, Rebecca, thanks, I forgot to ask that too.
I think there was discussion too about those 2 classrooms on the west side. So I guess the 2 that are sticking out there that could potentially be
The
transformed
portable.
into like a clubhouse of some sort, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just depending on like who's using that and if they're gonna give up that space, but there are 2 portables out there that could be utilized as well.
So one way that the leagues raise money, of course, is to have a snack, sort of snack stand there
Yeah.
too. Is that?
Yeah, it's next to the toilet seats, there's blue
Concession.
and then there's like a
Sorry, I don't
purple.
have my glasses.
Yeah, I know, it's very small.
So,
But part of the reconfiguration is like there was one little space next to the bathrooms that I believe currently is storage room. So I added dollars in there for like a small concessions.
what about trash collection for the fields?
Trash, I think for this site, I just assumed that there was a trash enclosure currently on the school site already. And so then I'm assuming that the trash would go in there.
So if you have snack stands and people eating from the snack stands, you need a way to collect trash. So I don't know what that would be, but I would suggest that we have something. Because we expect the leagues to clean up the fields, and we want to make it easy for them
Them the
to do
resources
that.
to do so.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that makes
Especially if
sense.
they're cooking in the snacks, I don't know if they're making french fries or any of that sort of stuff. I mean, done that for years. You need, saying it, you need some way to keep that clean and to get rid of trash.
Mhm.
And to have deliveries of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just,
and the parking like right there, so I don't see that delivery would be a concern. It's not that far away.
yeah, just typically we show something like this type of concession, it's usually assumed to be just prepackaged and it's not sized to be actually preparing food or that kind of thing. So it would be just things you bring in and prepackaged and just sell and, chips, popcorn, that kind of thing. So,
Okay. That's probably what people do more now anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Next one. Oh, you could skip. Yeah. And then anza here, we are showing some reconfiguration of certain spaces to add in the TK and then also the makerspace and flex lab in between those classrooms that you see there. Some additional work in the lobby for the single point of entry and then the new fencing in the front there along the north parking to basically enclose the site. And then also in addition to the current CDC building to add music as well as another CDC classroom to be able to eliminate the existing portables to the east side of the campus. So that's all reflected in there. Yeah, there's also a bit of like fencing work, I believe, across all of the school sites. We are replacing fencing that's identified to be shorter to taller fencing as well. So those are reflected in the fencing numbers. And then there's some like modernization and roofing work to be done at the MPR that was identified as leaking.
Do we have, I was gonna ask that question. Does this include complete roofing to the school site and then also possibly HVAC?
Yes, so that number is also included in there. Yeah, under systems and then
Okay,
modernization roofing. Yep, the entire roofing is being replaced. Should be replaced.
Just, I know that we're gonna talk about Cabrillo in a minute, and I know there's like a new TK sort of wing or whatever, but
Yes.
this still accounts for having TK at Anza. Can you talk about what the plan is there?
I think this was identified as like that we would leave the one TK here at Anza, and so that's why there's a reconfiguration of one of the rooms to become that, and then the rest of the needed TKs would all be housed at Cabrillo. Yeah.
So there would still be TK at both
Yes.
lowest elementary school sites.
Yes.
Okay. I thought that there was I guess I misunderstood that. I thought we were moving all of
I think
the,
she's looking at you, Blake, to
Yeah.
clarify.
I thought we were moving all of
I
the
was-
people to one campus.
So I think that one of the things, there's a short-term plan and then the long-term plan. The short-term plan was to maintain one TK at Anza while potentially the TK is developed at Cabrillo. And then make a better decision, a more informed decision once it's moved over there. We know that there's some connection from families to site in some ways, and so we wanted to keep the option open, but knowing that there may become a point just with enrollment trends and numbers that we could be flexible, and that could become a kinder room, it could become a first grader. I mean, we could utilize it or another collaborative space. There's lots of options for that at Anza, but the idea is, yes, a big portion of TK would end up at sorry.
And Joe, may I had one more question? Like when I'm looking at, for example, Anza, and I understand the scope categories and how you guys define that early on in this presentation. I guess my question is, and I know that many of those scope categories are incorporated, like for example, here at the Anza site, do we have a cost per site roughly projected? Is that going to be a later slide, or do we have it broken down by how much we plan to do at each site and what the cost is per site?
Yeah, I think Rick already shared
that was
that
an
in the
earlier
previous
slide.
earlier
Yeah.
slides, yes, for each of the school sites, that there is a budget per
Okay,
site.
perhaps,
And per
okay, I
category.
probably missed that. Okay,
Yeah, and I do have, and I have sent this to Blake or the even more detailed cost estimate that we don't have on these slides here that break it down even further. Like I'm looking at it now, and like, you guys are asking me a detailed question like, oh, is the roofing being in place? And you can clearly see that the dollar amount for roofing under ANZA kind of thing.
perfect. Okay,
Sounds like you created, obviously you could forward this to us.
Yeah, so then you can use it as a tool later on if you're doing specific projects and what was budgeted in the total amounts, exactly.
One of our core assurances is safety. In fact, it's number one. And in light of recent events, safety's certainly been top of my mind, is now accelerated. We have some vulnerabilities. Have we addressed those, particularly at this site?
Yes, that's included in the budget, the rework of the lobby area to create the single point of entry, and then the additional fencing up front there. There's also numbers in there to for additional security camera allowance, alarm, and then also electronic door lock number is also in there as well.
This area, do we have a wall here? I don't want a fence, I want a wall.
Currently it's decorative metal steel fencing to match the other fencing on the site, but we can definitely increase that to a CMU block wall.
I'm just concerned about a fence not stopping a bullet.
So, yeah. If you're thinking of stopping bullets, you got more problems than that wall. The thing is that when you think about safety, your mind goes all over the place in thinking of ways to protect our kids and our families. There's so much that goes on around a school that involves the community, certainly involves our staff, our students. The most recent event from this week, the shooter went in through a door that was unlocked and was on site for 40 minutes. So safety, clearly, we're not gonna try to solve all the safety problems as we look at this diagram. And I know we've had safety experts give us advice already. I'm sure we're gonna have more discussion about that, probably some this evening, and then more in the near future as we look at our priorities here. Which is one of the reasons I asked you about the list of items being in order of priority, because safety was kind of in the middle. And it's clearly top of mind here. So I appreciate the discussion, and I think, safety is, I'm not an expert in safety. And I know, you folks probably are way more prepared to discuss some of those items. And then there are people that we work with that are experts in safety. So whatever we do on the site, there will definitely be an attention to safety detail, and that will be the highest priority.
Okay. Yeah, so like, just to reiterate, those scope categories were numbered 1 through 15, but they were not ordered in any particular order. And so that's sort of kind of our exercise today, actually, that we will have you do to order, put in order the priorities. Next slide, please. So 138th Street School. Here we're just, because this one was like one of the older school sites, there, the administration being undersized, so we're showing actually a demolition of the existing admin building and building new, and then the rest of the older buildings on that school site would receive modernization and some reconfiguration to put in the flex lab and makerspace, as well as the reconfiguration of the library to modernize that. And then building a new construction, three classrooms in the back there for CDC to replace the portables that are currently there. And some improvements or repair of the existing field is also shown. And so this will be a comprehensive modernization, including roofing, paint, finishes, casework, technology, and all that.
I was particularly interested. This is one of the few times you're actually demolishing an existing building and rebuilding it. What led to that recommendation on this site?
Mainly because of the site is very tight. Also in terms of like, there wasn't too much room for expansion. And then also just the building itself being undersized for the number of staff, and there's not really much of a waiting area, and just rebuilding that. And so into something that's more efficient in terms of office spaces and safety and a better entry to the campus. And then also something that even in the previous process, as well as this time around, I believe the site tended to vote for admin being one of their top priorities.
I understand all of that, but the fact that you recommended it completely being torn down and rebuilt, because you can do a lot of facelifts and you can do a lot of additions and so on, which aren't as pricey as a completely new build. So I was just curious why you felt this particular building, rather than an expansion, needed a completely new rebuild.
I think just the way that it's configured, there's also in between there's a little nook in that building where there's like some utilities and things like that. I just think it would be difficult to keep that in place and then try to expand around
It's like a
something
monument
there.
in the building in that sense.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what you call
Yeah.
it, right? So,
Right.
yeah, so it is, so you'd want to restructure that entire sort of infrastructure as well.
Right.
Okay.
And plus we would be trying to expand it so much that I think it would be quite costly, because you would have to almost redo the whole structural system.
Anyway, right,
Yeah,
okay,
so then it
All right.
becomes a very high cost expansion.
I get that. Thank you. That makes sense. Thanks.
Joe, May, I believe.
Joe,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
Yes.
quick comment here as well, and Joe May, you may have a more accurate answer than I do. But just to help address Joanne, one of my understandings is like, if whenever a district touches a building and the modernization, I believe the percentage is 50% or greater. I think DSA also has some regulations that if you're touching or demoing more than 50% of the building, I believe now they require you to kind of do a full replacement of the building because the structural components are no longer really representative of the original approval. So maybe you can just briefly touch on that, because, but if that's part of my understanding, what kind of triggers that full building as well, on top of the items that you mentioned earlier, Joe May, with regards to the, I use the word the monument that's in the middle there, but if you could just touch on that, I mean, if I believe that's the threshold, about 50%.
Yeah, I can comment on that because that's right on the money there. The state of California requires that if you are touching a building and you're putting work into it that is 50% of the replacement value. The replacement value is kind of an arbitrary number that the state has selected, and it's a little bit of a number that's negotiable, but if you are around that 50% mark, then you're required to do a mandatory full seismic retrofit.
Okay.
That's the trigger, so it's a seismic retrofit piece. And so if you're doing very comprehensive reconfiguring, then you will have to do the seismic retrofit. In some cases, single-story wood frame buildings, that number isn't extraordinary, and sometimes think of it as the opportunity cost. If you're removing all the ceilings, re-roofing, and you're opening up the walls, the cost of retrofit is a lot more economical than it would be if you're just doing that work from scratch. So, but in this case, a small little building, you're going to be cutting into all different sides, trying to add to it. You would end up doing the full seismic retrofit, and you start to throw so much money at the small building that it just made sense to just for the cost to replace it with new construction. So.
Thank you, that makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
And the regulation impact of that too. Thanks, I really appreciate that discussion.
One question, Dr. Silvers, you and I were talking about some of the safety measures for entrance and protection of our school sites. I don't know if any of those are relevant to share or if they're built into the costs here, but they seem like there would be significant costs involved.
Yes, we discussed this as well, looking at some controlled entry systems, not only front entry systems where you would potentially, and again, it would be, there's several options out there and we have to pick the one that's best, but something, for example, either a video monitoring the front door where doors would basically remain locked, front entrances would remain locked. So it'd be controlled entry, there'd be a greeter. You'd have a visual of that, the individual that's wanting to enter the campus prior to them entering the campus. You'd be able to do any type of security checks there prior to entry, as well as increasing obviously our camera systems both inside and outside, and then including some sort of key card or a fob that then manages who's in the building, and at any given time you can actually monitor who's on site essentially, at any time. And when you leave, it just sort of clocks you out by.
I just want to make sure they were incorporated, or have they already been incorporated?
Yes, all of those items were incorporated, including, and like you can see, like I was talking about the higher fencing, like along ISIS and ISIS Avenue, all that whole fence there, we are replacing it with taller fencing as well. So yeah, all that and then electronic door locks and then the front entry.
That makes a lot of sense when you talk about redoing that entire building as well to add the safety features.
Yes.
As part of the new construction.
And then electronic door locks, we have also included in the budget for every classroom as well. Yeah, the card key system and all that.
Just for the sake of it, this fencing that you're seeing along the east side of 138 along ISIS there is one of the very few areas on our district where the classrooms and the windows to those classrooms are actually sort of butted up against a public street. So more often than not, they're set back, but this one is. So that's why the additional fencing, maybe height and additional fencing itself.
Right. Next site. So it's Cabrillo Elementary, and again, like we just mentioned previously, the new TK wing would be at the northeast corner there, because this is relatively new, a new campus, so we're not showing very much work on the existing buildings. It's just except for some specific areas of reconfiguration or some dollars put in there to create like collaborative areas, and then a makerspace next to the library, and some dollars put into the MPR because there was a request for it to be able to be open up to the exterior and utilize that space better, or expanded kind of thing. Other than that, I think it's just I believe there's just some numbers in there for replacing the roofing, and then some paint and painting of the exterior. Yeah, just a refresh.
I have a question about the multi-purpose room there.
Yes.
Is, if people are in that building, is there access then to the full campus through that building, or how is access managed through that building? I know there is now. And I wondered if that was requested as a change, or is that a safety consideration?
That was not discussed, with the site team back then, but I'm sure it can be managed, by door locks and
I could jump in on, I mean, that is a conversation. I know Dr. Goldman, we had this conversation earlier today, is that all of our school sites actually have that challenge of an entry from the exterior to the path, the multi-purpose room, and then into the campus. So I think my first reaction, earlier today when we talked about it, was we need to do a better job of just ensuring our protocols are safe in terms of how you lock down those facilities, have regular checks of those doors and that kind of thing. And maybe if there's a new locking system, there'll be some kind of warning sign that it's open, that it's unlocked, there'll be a red light or something. So we'll have to work with that. Definitely a concern, and it's something we need to know.
I'll have to say, every time I've gone to that multi-purpose room, I've had to either have someone unlock the door or go through the office to get in, so there has been protocol being followed, yes. So I haven't been able to go in by myself, so yeah.
I have a question about the shade at Cabrillo, which is
Yes.
currently a big issue, especially on the.
Yeah, that's included in there.
Yeah, I know that we're currently, I mean, this is just like, what are we doing now about it? Because I know there's more shade going in on the kinder side, but there's still nothing on the first grade, second grade side. And I'm curious, Dr. Silvers, if you can maybe talk about, I know there are some constraints around like how we pay for shade and who can pay for it and stuff, but I know like the PTA has a surplus of funds that they would like to maybe contribute. So I'm just curious, how that, is decided and.
Sure. Yeah, frankly, the request for the extra shade on the kinder yard actually came from, the teachers and staff and the principal specific for that kinder yard. So that's why we went there, and I just haven't had that request to look into the playground that I recall. So I mean, maybe we brought up, and I apologize.
Yeah, there's zero shade for the first and second graders during recess currently. There is nowhere for them to go. I'm a first grader. There's nowhere for them currently at Cabrillo to like take a break in the shade. There's not a tree, there's not a, so I guess I just tangent, putting a plug that we
Let me talk to Ms.
sooner
Moore,
rather than later.
I mean, I don't know if we have the money. I mean, again, we have to look at that. I don't know what the cost is. Because it'll be a larger shade structure, I'm guessing.
Anything that we could put in there, I think would be.
Tents and so forth on the other campuses for temporary shade. I mean, seems like we could at least do that.
I'm gonna
regardless
ask
of a
we-
major.
Sorry, I know it's
No,
a tangent.
I'm gonna ask you table this. I'm just doing a time check and recognize we still have an exercise to do.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna ask us, we kind of expedite us so we can get
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
I just have one quick comment here, and it's more probably for Blake than anything else. And
Okay.
for some reason, I'm hung up on the transitional kindergarten location. I feel like it belongs more towards where the CDC is, and I feel the CDC should go more towards where we're illustrating the
Can
transitional.
you point to that on the map? It's hard to see from here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, no, was that Nelson?
Yeah.
Nelson, I'm so sorry. Can you repeat that question? I apologize.
Yeah, I feel where I'm a little, it's more of a personal hang up. I feel that transitional kindergarten should be located more with our kindergartners. So I think a location like where the CDC is currently shown would be a better location than and I think that the CDC should probably be relocated out to where the fields are at. That's just, I'm kind of personally hung up on that. It seems like that program would be better suited near our whole kindergarten program and playground and so forth.
So that definitely can be done, but right now we're showing it out there. Those are proper size TK rooms that are the CDC recommended, or I'm sorry, CDE recommended 1350 larger size rooms that you typically see for your kindergarten classrooms.
Right.
Unfortunately, the building that you have currently for the CDC classrooms, all of those classrooms are just standard 960 square foot classrooms, and many do not have the restrooms. So it would be kind of quite costly to reconfigure. You would have to almost take two classrooms, convert them into one TK room, plus add plumbing and connection to all of that. So it would be just a little bit more difficult kind of construction than just building new for the
Yeah.
TK. And it's especially if the district goes for the state TK funding, you would have to provide proper size rooms. You can't.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I understand the
Yeah.
requirement, the transitional K and stuff. Yeah.
But definitely, in the future, if that makes more sense, if you built those, you got your funding and later on move TK up to the smaller CDC rooms and swap it, I mean, you could definitely probably do that. They would just be larger size rooms back there.
Yeah, I think our first priority, Nelson, was to do that. And I think then you did some research, Joe May and Rick, on the TK requirements. But I agree that if it's something that we can do and make work, I think that that's definitely worth a conversation. I appreciate that.
Good thinking. Okay, next.
And then Dana Middle School, let's see again, like similar to Cabrillo, being slightly newer campus, not much work being done to the existing classrooms. However, some addition of proper science lab for the 6th grade, as well as 2 additional classroom expansion and some small work to some of the elective spaces that need expansion, such as music and the Project Lead the Way that's behind the stage. And some modernization shown for the multi-purpose room for a better sound system and just kind of revamping that space a little bit. We're also showing on the play fields here, synthetic fields and an addition of the lights where there's already infrastructure in there. And then the fencing and netting that goes around those fields as well. Okay, any questions there? All right, not next slide. Next slide, let's get this. These are the prioritization results from the last town hall committee meeting, and I just wanted to share those with you. I also want overlaid the priorities that were the result of the 2020 master plan, comparing it to the 2022. So you can see those on the right side number there. Some of them, correlated and some of them did not. I also overlaid in the red boxes the last time around when we spoke, the board priorities back then. And obviously there was like safety and security is up there, site utilities, improvement of the restrooms and systems, maker spaces, and the modernization of existing classrooms. This time around, there was a lot of voting, obviously, with the exterior play areas, play fields, and hard courts, and that was even in 2020 one of the top 3 as well, and then as well as technology, and then outdoor learning spaces like learning courts and quad spaces. Okay, any questions?
I would just say that looking at this, if I'm interpreting this correct, it seems like the board's priorities and the community's priorities from 2020, 22 are a little bit off, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A little bit different.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then the next slide. So again, we looked at it a little bit different way, priorities by site, and what was voted on in 2020. They do kind of match up actually quite well. If you don't pay too much attention to the numbering, but the top three that came up were still at the older site in terms of 138th Street and Dana Middle School, but then also the 135th and Aviation, the playfields came up on the top, and then again overlaid in the red box is the what the board also prioritized. And then this is just the site priorities. And this is the result also again overlaid with 2020 and 2022. And I know there was a concern of like representation at the FMP committee meeting versus when we spoke to the sites back in 2022, we actually asked each of the site committees to write down in the survey, their top priorities after seeing the master plan. And so I overlaid those in the red box for you to see as well, so that that might influence how you prioritize as well. So it was an interest in 2022, the top priorities were exterior play spaces, outdoor spaces, restrooms and systems and admin spaces. However, when we had talked to the site committees, it was safety, the NPR, and then the makerspace.
The world has changed since 2020. And 2020 is yesterday. So let's go to today.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's very reflective of the 2022 priorities, Neil, as you point out, because look at that seems to be a priority, at least from the community, with outdoor learning environments and outdoor spaces, right?
For sure. Yeah. And we've seen that in like many other districts as well, rather than focusing on, we were updating the master plan in a different district, and previously their focus was building MPRs, and this time around that was definitely not the focus anymore. And it was exterior spaces, play spaces, and then outdoor amenities, maybe just larger lunch shelters so that learning could happen outside. Okay.
All right, let's keep going.
Yeah.
Concerned about time, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Candidly, guys, I'm not terribly concerned what we voted on in 2020. It seems completely irrelevant. Let's
Okay.
move on.
So 138th Street, yeah.
The time thing, I think we're trying to be done by 5:45.
Okay. Yeah.
Just give people a heads up.
Yeah.
So we want to
Just
go
do it.
where we
We'll
were,
review
where
these
we-
sites and then we'll just move on.
Yeah.
Get to the voting part,
Yeah.
So
So we
Yeah.
can just keep.
just
going.
talk about 2022. Tell them what the town hall.
Yeah, so,
That's good.
yeah, and you can just kind of see, yep, and then you can just keep it on this slide. Yep, so I have all of these pieces cut out over there, next to the table, next to the thermometer bar, and, so what you guys will do is just kind of prioritize, in terms of top priority, and then build that thermometer up to, whatever dollar amount. And then I think, like we were talking about, we weren't gonna be too concerned about a dollar amount today. It was just more of for reference, right? And it's more of a matter of like, what should our new priorities be moving forward?
Yeah, so maybe I could just elaborate real quick and this might be a little difficult if you're dialing in remote here, but we do have physical boxes that represent. So if you just look at the brown one, number 10, safety security, that represents how much of the total cost, it gets allocated to safety security. So we'd ask if that ends up being your number one priority, you would start with that and literally Velcroed onto the thermometer, and you would start working your way up. And you could look at and say some of the scope areas are going to be high priorities, and you could put those scope categories on the thermometer. But if you also wanted to say, let's say we definitely want to do Del Air Site, because that's a high priority, then you would take that box and put it up on the thermometer as well. So you can build it different ways just to give you an idea of how far the money your money might stretch to see, but really the idea is, if you think of it in terms of highest priority to lowest priority, and then where the line gets drawn is a question of funds available at that time, depending on how much you go for depending on the bond that you might go for, or if that state allocation dollar changes, that can be determined later. Really what we're interested in today is just what are your priorities from, so.
If we pick a school site
that would encompass portions of these other pieces, right? So it would be
Yeah.
like a double counting in
So,
some way.
so it's gets to be a little bit of an exercise. We brought scissors and even, so like under systems, for example, since that's such a big block there. If you were to pick a school site, that systems purple box is got different stratifications by school site. So you could then extract out that section because you've already covered it on the school site. So, you know.
We can kind of eyeball it though, Rick,
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was
Yeah.
saying, like, we can eyeball it, and then we can do the math when we go back to the office, but then for now, you know, I would just look at it bigger picture, and, you know, obviously, there's some wiggle room, and we're not trying to hit a specific dollar amount either, so.
So to figure out what you just said, we take whatever we consider to be the highest priority and that goes on the bottom.
Correct.
So we're building from the bottom up.
Correct, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So you can see all those boxes down on the table have Velcro on them, and you can just stick them right onto the thermometer. And it just gives you a rough order of magnitude of how much money you're spending.
And these are just randomly distributed on the screen.
Total random, yeah. Okay.
And are we doing this individually
Right.
or are we doing it together?
Together.
as a-
I think together, yeah, you could, maybe just talk amongst yourselves and
Yeah.
agree with what maybe the first.
I'm all about safety first here, guys, so that was what I would start with that.
So why don't we talk and maybe Blake can actually place the.
It's a B banner.
Thanks, Vanna, because we have Roger and Nelson on the phone, so.
Roger Nelson, do you have a thought for our first or highest priorities? 1, 2, 3 thoughts.
I was just gonna say Neil, Joanne, and Rebecca represent us well, and the pressure is on you.
You get out of it that easy. Blake can be Vanna.
I'm fine with putting safety as the first, you know, on the first layer of this jewel.
I agree with Neil on safety first.
I agree as well.
All right, we're done. Have a good evening, everybody.
First box was easy.
That's the
Now I
easiest
know what's
box,
the
yeah,
next
right.
one.
Oh, no. I would vote that we would put exterior play.
I
That
would too.
includes the 135th and aviation stuff. It's the big green box. It's all the exterior.
Yeah, no, I'm good with
stuff.
that. And unless there's some maintenance on one of the sites that has to take priority over that. Is there any emergency we're trying to solve?
Yeah, we've got roofing, we've
We have
got,
roofing.
yeah, where would that be?
That's
Good
good
point.
point.
Yeah, I think roofing
under
may
the
have to
sites.
supersede the fields.
The roofing stuff would be under the modernization
Of the
numbers.
site, under
Yeah.
That's 01.
Oh, one, yeah, oh, one, that is blue block.
Oh,
I mean, there's prioritization of what we want, and then there's essential things that we need.
Right.
I mean, the need needs to be, it's necessary, that's what we're identifying.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
And
think,
so,
I agree with
And the
Joanne's.
roof, right?
yeah.
I agree with Joanne's maintenance comment. I think also too, though, that the way, I think it's a little misleading because we're seeing play fields here, right? With 135th and Aviation, I think Rebecca, you made the comment, and then you look at the Del Air play fields, right? But the way the community looks at these is work that has not been finished. It's unfinished to them, right? We're looking at it as play fields, but it's scope of work that's unfinished as far as the community. So I do think that's a priority as well.
And I agree with that, but I think I would have trouble looking someone in the face if we don't replace the roof.
Oh, I agree 100% with you, Joanne.
Yeah.
So what if we
maybe
put
it's
01
modernization,
next,
Yeah.
and then the play fields?
Correct. I'm good with that, yes.
you can, one.
And
Keep
Blake,
moving
in terms
around
of-
the blocks as you start building, and you might decide, oh, let's move this one up and take that one down.
Sure.
Yeah.
Blake, in terms of our TK that's required, and we have that new building over at Cabrillo. Do we have is there a mandate by the state as to when that has to be in effect? And obviously, we don't have the bond yet. We don't have construction dollars. We have space elsewhere in the district where we can manage that, or does that have to be a priority because it's mandated by the state?
No, for the short term, we
Blake,
have.
you wanna step up to a mic?
Sorry. Eileen, do you want to speak to that? No, I got it.
For the short term, we're actually able to use the one room over at Anza, as well as the 2 classrooms over at Cabrillo. And they will be fine for a couple years.
Okay,
Then we
okay.
have to get into it. So I think it buys us, let's call it 3 to 5, Eileen. We talked about this recently.
Our numbers are pretty flat this year,
Yeah.
so we look like we're stable, but
Yeah.
even with the extended birthday.
And because of our permit population, we are able to, sort of use that permit, I guess what we call acceptances to balance that number out a little bit.
Okay, so the program's important. It's just in terms of the priority, it doesn't have to be earlier, it can be later.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
I'm looking at scope category 8 and 9, existing building systems, toilets, energy efficiency, and site utilities. I'm wondering how many of these fall into these are necessary replacements. I don't know.
Answer for sure.
Which one is where does the main distribution frame and the IT main infrastructure that's over at Anza, Blake, fall? Is that under site utilities or is that an infrastructure? Because that's the hub.
Yeah, that is under 10, 15, I believe.
And I think that does need replacement. I think our technology or equipment there is pretty old.
Yeah, that's.
I would
that's a
rank
safety
that up
security
there.
issue.
Yeah, I agree.
It's
15, correct.
Is
Yeah.
it 15?
Yeah.
15, I have it, yeah.
Yeah.
If there's a site that you think is a high priority, then maybe you want to just test it and put that site up. Like if ANZ is a site, then that would encompass all those other components. If you capture the entire school block.
So,
Right.
But they don't want to do all of
I
that.
No,
don't
they were
think
just
it
saying,
does.
just because Anza houses the main.
Yeah.
tech-
Oh, gotcha,
Connected.
gotcha.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, and I think you hit on a good point there, Roger, Neil said that here next to me anyway, that the infrastructure update is also a security item. It may not be physical security, it definitely is data security
Absolutely.
and PII responsibility.
So I'm wondering, Blake, if you move that, I don't, Roger Nelson, I don't know if you can see the screen, if you can see us, if Blake were to move this thing he's building, this thermometer in front of us with the camera, show it so they could see it.
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, I'll get the easel.
Just bring the easel over, yeah.
Maybe if you had it by the podium, all right, actually, yeah, there you go.
Can you see me?
I
I
can,
can see you.
yes.
I think you all can. Oh,
Just,
Oh.
oh, what if you changed it to the podium? Put it in front of the podium. Yeah, put it right in front of the podium, where Joe
Now
made
we
it.
can't see it.
Right in front of the podium. Yeah, there you go.
I don't know
And
if I
then-
can see it that way.
Jason, if you could swap the camera.
Yeah, we have a view of both of the
Okay,
board and the
fantastic.
podium.
So can you see the thermometer, Roger?
You have to zoom in.
It's just really small, guys. I think, yeah.
All right, we were trying to be helpful.
No, but thank you. Appreciate that.
Oh, no, it's this way, Johnny. You can see the camera's up here.
Camera's here.
Wait, no, I can't.
Right behind center.
Oh, I can't see you. Okay, yeah. Here, this way.
You can really zoom in a bit.
Can you zoom?
All right, let's keep going, guys.
So what about the 8 and 9?
Yeah, what about 8, 9? Because that looks pretty important. The sewers, the electrical mains.
What do you have for
storm
eight?
drainage. I mean, I don't know.
Looking at systems.
Like, how critical is that? It seems pretty
It
important.
does to me.
I think systems is critical. I think we're referring to HVAC and
Yeah.
those items, right?
8 and 9 on the list. Oh, yeah, you don't have the list, gentlemen. Yeah, we're talking about existing building system, toilets, energy efficiency, site utility.
Yeah, that's
That would be
critical.
The
You did?
HVAC,
Oh, great, thank you.
the
That's what you said.
HVAC and restrooms would be all in that category.
I-
Yeah. I think that's critical.
What's that?
And the small gray one.
Small gray one.
Yeah, site utility.
How about another
Site
question?
utility is like mainly like the underground stuff, like the sewer and, right, yeah.
I just don't want us to, we build this pretty edifice on top and then this comes to haunt us because we haven't taken care of the infrastructure.
This category 11, which is called campus arrival, parking drop off.
Yes.
Is that related to site security also? It seems like that fits in with access management and of people as well as cars and so on. Does it, or I guess I should ask that.
It is related, yeah, because it is your front of your school, so there's a relationship there. And usually you see school sites that will improve parking lots and drop offs at the same time. They're doing the security and fencing. So yeah, there is a relationship there for sure.
mostly because it seems to me that's an opportunity for someone to sort of invade, to use that word, a campus when there's so much activity happening for pickup and drop off. Yeah, it feels like it.
But I think most of your parking lots were in pretty good condition, so it wasn't like we were, reconfiguring them or changing them too much. It really was more like resurfacing and restriping them, so,
So it didn't have anything to do with safety.
yeah, it was more, I think it's more maintenance.
There were no
of
ballasts.
existing-
We weren't.
Yeah, it's not like I was moving a parking lot to the other side or adding a lane for drop off, because you guys, all of your school sites already had that, yeah.
I think for me, one of the other items that we can look at and could make a very quick impact is the flexible furniture. When we did our open house walks, I saw that we had some very old furniture, and I think different schools and even ourselves are teaching in different ways. I think the flexible furniture would be a good item to have a little bit earlier.
Good deal, boy, put it up.
I was thinking the same thing relative to reconfiguring the classrooms, just again, modernizing, upgrading all of our classrooms, giving our educators the support they need in this whole process.
I think we're on the same page with that too. That's kind of where I was headed as well in terms of, I saw it as the lower cost item there for flexibility and modernizations, and then of course the spaces.
No, now we're talking about.
Category 2.
Small green one. Like small blue, light blue. Yeah, that one, yeah.
Sorry. But it's all in there because there wasn't too much configuration work.
That's like an easy win.
Are we,
Yes.
this is next, you okay with that?
What is 02? I can't see it.
Reconfigure classrooms.
There you go.
Reconfigure classrooms?
Correct.
Yeah, so it's
Okay.
minimal in certain sites.
I didn't even see that on here, but okay.
It's on the first picture I sent you.
And then another question. We
Is that the
have-
light blue one?
Be on that.
Yes.
Okay, I can,
That was, it was mainly like, at Anza, we had the TK room, like reconfiguring a little bit there, and there were a few spaces in the Cabrillo, and then at Dana, so that's what those were.
Blake, we have a new requirement, I think, starting next year for meal service. We have to, what are those changes? We have to do breakfast.
Right.
Oh, that sounds out here.
So it's 2 meals a day.
Right. Because Roger and us can't do it either.
So it's 2 meals a day at reasonable times during the day. So basically having to serve breakfast and lunch daily.
Does that impact do we need any changes in our food service facility to accommodate that?
I don't see that at this point.
Okay, good, okay.
where is item 4?
Music classrooms, right?
Oh.
Right.
What was it?
It includes building music classrooms, that particular line item.
That's true, that is true.
Go ahead, Roger.
Where are the maker spaces?
Yeah, that's
and
next on my list. That's category 4.
Yeah, category 4, because part of it is like that are the curriculum articulation as well, not only just in our schools, but as they move from elementary to middle school and eventually the high school, there is some nice science component projects in there as well, but also visual and performing arts, I think were a part of that.
Yeah, so that would include just your music rooms, flex lab, and then makerspace.
Is
work.
that 4?
Yes.
On the document you handed us, music classrooms were under 5,
Oh,
so should they have been under 4?
No, I'm sorry, yeah, you're right. Music is with the NPR usually, right?
We should do 4 and 5.
This is 4 or 5.
I'm good with 4. I'm not sure about 5 yet. I mean, I want to do everything, of course, but this is the next
So
priority.
do I put 4 down?
Are you okay with that, Joe?
Where music, let me just.
I
double
thought
check that.
music was on 4 for some
You're
reason.
talking about, maker.
Maybe Blake, if you can share with us which bars are left, because
Sure. We have all of the school sites, Roger. Oh, you know what's, you know what we didn't do?
He's saying what we didn't do yet is
We haven't done any of the playfields.
any of the.
No, the playfields are all part of exterior play.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
just
correct.
so I know what's left to put up on the board.
There's 2 separate.
Yeah, but they're part of 13.
The playfields in 13 include the specific. school
Oh,
sites,
I'm
right?
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're covered.
I think that was
Like the
already
Del Air and the
Right.
136. Those playfields are all part of the playfield number.
It's all part of the 13 as
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
correct? Yeah.
So I have a question, Jimmy, which was, maybe we just skipped over it before, which is that there's an innovation lab under library spaces. Can you tell me what the difference there is between that and the STEAM lab?
Typically, that's like more like the computer lab.
Because right now we've already sort of reconfigured the computer labs to be STEAM labs at some of these campuses.
Yeah.
So I just, in terms of like, it's not a priority for me, I guess, to like.
You feel it's covered?
We've already done it, I think. I don't know, Eileen or.
You're talking
Dr. Harbeck or-
category 6 library space.
Correct, under library spaces, we've, at least the innovation lab line item, I think has happened over spring break this year, right? At least at Cabrillo and 138th Street.
Yeah, for example, Anza has like that computer space area right next to the library, so then that would be the innovation. That's what I'm categorizing as innovation lab, yeah.
The only exception would be at Dana, where we're going to have to reconfigure some space over there to allow for a career tech exploration lab. education lab.
So would that fall in the innovation lab category or the STEAM lab category? Well, I guess STEAM lab is at the elementary school. There's an elective programs under category 4 that are at the middle and high school, so maybe the CTE at Dana.
Yeah,
is in that
CTE,
category?
all of that stuff is under the maker, the 4.
Okay, which we've already just put on.
Yeah.
One thing that strikes me as a given is 15 tech infrastructure and equipment. We haven't put that in here, but I feel like we're putting it in here with everyone that it would be relevant to.
I thought we did.
We did tech is the pink piece.
Oh, that is,
between
okay. All right,
exterior and
good,
system.
thank you.
Hey, Roger, just so you, for you and Nelson, so we have outdoor
Blake, you
learning.
need to be in a mic, my friend.
So what's left is outdoor learning,
Outdoor learning, we have library,
library,
we have admin,
admin,
new construction,
new construction,
parking,
parking,
NPR.
and MPR.
And I'm looking at this again, I think the music was encompassed under the elective spaces, maker STEM science, so what you put up there, the music is under there and
And not under MPR
it's not
food
under
service.
this, yeah,
Okay.
you guys move that one, yeah. Great. So we got that covered.
I'm feeling new construction for our students is
Yeah.
been left out.
Yeah, we can add new construction. I think that's right, that we need to do the new construction business.
Roger Nelson, your thoughts?
Category 3, guys.
It's a big
I'm
item.
trying to take it all in. Maybe you guys can summarize it for us.
3 is new construction.
Remove portable classrooms, demolish existing buildings, new classroom buildings, classroom CDC classrooms, student collabs, site improvements surrounding the building pad.
Which,
Scope 3.
well, no, I know that, but which one gets us the new administration building at 138th Street?
That's 7.
7, not 3.
Okay.
Yeah, I would tend to think 3 would be next, the new
So I think
construction.
So if I remember the survey, I think 138 ranked up there with the community. I think perhaps because if I look at all the schools, Anza, Cabrillo, Dana, 138 is the least where we there. I think it's the least that we've done, right, of all the campuses.
Yeah, it's the only one they got a thorough modernization, whereas over time, all the other school sites were new or were completely rebuilt.
Right.
I don't know if it's category 7, administration, staff support and counseling, which would include the 138th admin building is a safety and security issue that is otherwise unaddressed.
Correct, that's why I brought it up.
Mhm.
If that's the case,
Can we just
again,
put up 138th Street or
Yeah.
can we just add 138th Street and then figure out what how that brings it down when you guys go and reconfigure them all?
138th is a lower dollar number than all of admin, is that correct? Well, I don't know.
Could you just slice the admin part of 138th Street?
How much is
Yeah, you
138th
could-
Street?
You could just do the admin at 138, we'll replace it off, but,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
You know, what
The
percent?
admin at 138 strikes me as back down at the very bottom of safety and
Right.
security.
Yeah, given how it was described today and why it's a priority.
Shuffle them.
Yeah.
You're capturing that, 'cause I don't.
What a read.
You good with that, Roger and Nelson? You have thoughts on that?
Do you want to use the scissors?
I would agree. I think, Neil, on 138th Street, I think that entry needs a lot of rework with like, whether it's a buzzer
Yes, we should
system.
have it.
Hold on, everybody. Let's hear Roger.
Oh, I see. That's on 07. You could slice that piece off, $4 million.
Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah, I was just sharing that I think that entry system at Cabrillo of all of our school sites is probably the one that's the most open, maybe once you enter into that admin space. I think there's more controls in our other areas that we can address, but that whole admin building, I think, or area for sure needs to be reconfigured.
All right, so we're cutting that off. So we put it on, we're just adding that part of 138. It is 5:45, guys. We're gonna cut this at 5:50. So what do we do?
I know. Kids scissors, yeah.
I'm not trying to cut
The
through the
kindergarten
paper.
scissors to try to cut through Velcro.
So we want to do, but that's, we're moving that down.
I think so.
Where we want to put it.
It's right at the bottom with safety and security.
Just pencil it in.
Oh.
What else, what do we need to do to finalize? Sorry, guys, we're out of time and we gotta finish in 4 minutes.
Can you go back to the slide that talks about?
So I think we do need to put budget construction on that, right?
Okay,
We have to
we're
put that in
gonna put
there.
that up here.
You want to put it
Yeah, I'm good with new. I wanna give the.
I think 3 was new construction, right?
for 3?
Number 3.
There we go.
Blake, make sure you get a picture of that thermometer by the end of the night.
Okay,
All
we got
right,
it.
we got it.
So then maybe the outdoor spaces, I think we saw that in the survey. That might be a little high already, but maybe I was thinking the
We
outdoor
have the
spaces.
exterior play, Roger.
You know, I'm wondering, yeah, that was my feeling, the exterior play. I'm wondering. if
Right, that's the same,
staff
right.
support and counseling comes before outdoor spaces, so we support our staff. And with the new fields gives that that would supplement outdoor space. I don't know if that's an answer, but that's where my head is.
And
Oh,
then
because we're
definitely
doing the
want to,
field already.
We're already
Yeah.
doing the field, so
Yeah,
we get
it's
some
out-
outdoor
It is
newness.
outdoors. Yeah, you're right.
yeah, no, I definitely think that we need the learning centers for our counseling, speech and psychological services folks.
We leave it there, do we want to add? So we still have, just on these itemized, we have parking and drop off, which I think we said could be probably last. Library and NPRs. We want to fill it in.
Probably do library before the NPR.
Where did number 7 go? Because that was admin, staff.
Yeah, is 7 on the list?
We
sliced
cut it.
Yeah, we cut it.
Oh, you put some of it
So
down.
maybe put that back.
You put them at the top.
Actually, the admin was just, whatever was left was just the Del Air and anza, remember the anza safety thing?
Okay,
Should the
Okay, great.
anza safety
I think we're good then.
admin improvements be done?
If it's safety, it's at the bottom.
That was the,
But isn't that in here too, though, in safety?
oh, yeah.
Right.
probably.
It's already included, they're saying.
Right. So,
Oh,
So just put it-
Just put it there, yeah.
Okay, and then you want this, like Del Air, we don't, it's back up here. Super high.
okay. Library, or Roger say library,
And then NPR,
and I heard NPR,
and then drop off.
and then drop off. All right,
I'm not sure I have total confidence in the top of the chart, but I feel pretty good about the bottom of the chart.
That's good.
But yeah.
Yeah.
And just to summarize, if you can look at, back to this slide where we gave the range of funds for projects, so if the range is somewhere between 66 million and 90 million, that would be, if you pick the lower bit of your range, then you're gonna get everything from this category utilities down, or if you went up to the 90 million, then you're gonna be picking off, percent of your new construction down. So it's very high percentage of projects, actually.
Modernization, safety, fields, technology. Covered.
I think I tend to agree with you, Neil. I think I'm confident on that, maybe bottom 2/3 or 60%. Not sure about that top portion, but that I think it addresses more the needs.
Yeah.
So
And the reality,
I
Roger, is
like
if you
it.
look at that 60 to 90, 60
Right.
million, that's all we get anyway.
Right.
All right, anything to wrap us up in our minute remaining, and thank you guys very much for tonight.
Yeah, well, thank you. If there was any further discussion, we'd be happy to stick around for questions. Otherwise, we'll kind of put our thermometer away and we'll summarize this as part of the final master plan document.
Great.
Thank you so
Well,
much.
Rick and Jome, thank you very much. It is about to be 5:50, and this will adjourn the facilities master plan public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Well done.
Thanks.
Yeah.